sorry. Okay, yeah. Rain, sorry. Sometimes I look at the names, it's quite difficult to know how to spell. So thank you very much. You are coming from the Car College of Law, Goa, India, and you have 15 minutes for your presentation. Please.
Thank you,
Start
Professor.
the hand.
A very good afternoon to this August gathering. We are glad that this is the final session of the final last the young scholars panel, right? And I'm glad to be the final speaker of this final panel, right? But at this final point, I would like to begin something. At this end, I want to begin a conversation on something which I was hoping to hear at this conference. And that is what my topic is. I have to turn it on. Yes, can you just, this one? Yes, by my, no, sorry, by my name, by Rita. Yes, makes sense. Thank you very much, Rita. Okay, so my topic is Future of Responsibility to Protect R2P. Right, so I think I'll stand because I'm an assistant professor at Govind Ramnath Kare College of Law. So I spend 3 hours in a day and I cannot just sit for 15 minutes. Let me just stand and speak on this topic now. The status of an individual in this international community is the most precarious and the most vulnerable one. Especially when there are conflicts around, there is no recourse for that individual, the small man, to go to. Especially when the home state or the home sovereign is impotent to take care of its own citizens, or it is the perpetrator, where does the individual go? Now, this question that I'm asking is not a unique one in international law. I'm sure all of you have read about it, heard about it, and you can see about it. I mean, see the topic now, and your brain is clicking, yes, right to protect. But what are we doing about it? So I'm here to start this conversation, as stated earlier, and hopefully in the next conference, there would be some committee or somebody speaking or somebody presenting more about it. Especially when we see the Russia-Ukraine conflict going on, the outcome of it, whatever will happen awaits us. The withdrawal of the Afghanistan, the US troops from Afghanistan, the consequences of it that we see. In light of that, my question is, what are we doing? It is the responsibility of the young scholars, of the international lawyers, to implement a noble norm. Okay, let me just say it's not a principle, it's just a norm which is out there. We need to mobilize it for the common good, and that is the theme of our conference. Now, the outline, how am I going to go about it, is I'll start with what is R2P and its evolution. Then we are going to move towards the need of R2P. What is the need? Then the 12 perspective, that is the third world approach to international law. I come from India and I identify myself as a 12 scholar or a 12 proponent. So I cannot miss that. And then there are some reforms that I would put forth and put it up for discussion. The substantive reforms and procedural reforms, and then finally bugle call. Bugle call is basically given at the start of a war, but I am giving it to end the wars, end the conflicts, and bring up this responsibility. Now, what is R2P? R2P, so R2P is based on this concept that sovereignty stays. Okay, the international law respects sovereignty of every nation. When it comes to R2P, it is based on sovereignty. How? Because it allows every sovereign, it gives the responsibility to that nation to protect its citizens, and only in absence of any action by that sovereign is the global community or the international community responsible. It takes upon the responsibility to protect the individual, the small man. Now, R2P is a global norm. It is rooted in the principle of sovereignty, peace, security, and human rights, and it is distinct from humanitarian intervention. We will come to that soon. It is based on 3-pillared approach, which was given in the 2009 report of the United Nations, the UN Secretary General, which said that the first pillar is that the primary responsibility to protect is with the sovereign, the state. Second, the international assistance and capacity building must be provided by the global community. And third, timely and decisive response would be taken. Now I am proposing a reform to that as well, so let us look into it in a short while. R2P applies to 4 crimes which have been listed: genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. With that, we go towards the evolution of R2P. It started after the 1990s genocides which were happening across the globe, and the United Nations just sat and watched it. No actions were taken. After that, there was the the Commission on Intervention and State Sovereignty, which was spearheaded by the Canadian government back then. It came out with a report which brought in this concept of R2P. Then it was adopted by the global leaders and the global states unanimously in 2005, and the document is United Nations World Summit Outcome Document. Only 2 paras deal with it, 138 and 139. But still, that's a huge, pretty big step. Then came in the Kenyan crisis in 2007 and 8, wherein R2P was used at the insistence of the France government, and the dispute was mediated by the then UN Secretary General, and that was a success. So we were reaching at the peak of R2P, how it could be mobilized. But then came in the Ivory Coast crisis. However, here there was already a committee which was existing, and arms and ammunition force was used to diffuse this crisis. Then came in the notorious one, the Libyan crisis. Right, as we all know, what happened here was the civilians were killed, R2P was used in a sense that force was used. But to be honest, at that point of time, force was required, right? But that gave a bad name to R2P. And since then, R2P has not been used at any point of time. Since then, you see the decline, and then there's etc. With every green dot that comes in the timeline, R2P, the relevance of R2P is going down. And we need to bring it up, and that is what this conversation is about. Now, the dots which are etc. are these. There is the Global Center for Responsibility to Protect. It has come out with its quarterly bulletin on June 1st, which signifies the areas where R2P needs to be used. Okay, so kindly correlated, because the points, I couldn't actually fit in all those over here, so that is what this data is for. Now the main question, do we need R2P? Can I just get a yes or no? Or maybe?
Both.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so some might say no. Chapter 6 and 7 of the United Nations Charter are enough. We have coercive methods, we have non-coercive methods. Let us mobilize those. Then some person might even say, let's legitimize humanitarian intervention. Let's call a spade. Use force, call it humanitarian intervention or use of force. Then some might say, yes, we need R2P. We cannot just rely on these two methods which are there. Even in those, some might say, let R2P be as it is, which is currently, I say, paralyzed. And some say it is dead, but let's call it paralyzed because we are going to revive it. Then some might say, like me, let's try to reform it. Let's bring in procedural reform and substantive reform. Before that, the 12 approach. If anybody has thought about it, humanitarian intervention, R2P, one and the same. It's not. The distinction can be seen here. When it comes to humanitarian intervention, there is use of force without any reason, without any authorization. But when it comes to R2P, they say that you have to use the authorization of the United Nations Security Council, only then use force. But first, when we speak about R2P, use non-coercive methods. Now, speaking about the approach, they disapprove of R2P. Now, why am I here? I called myself in the beginning a TWAIL's scholar or a proponent. So, if the TWAIL approach is against R2P, what am I doing? Am I going against my own beliefs? No, I'm not. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to put forth the approach of TWAIL. Why does TWAIL disregard or disapprove R2P? It is because of the same reason, that is, there is use of force. And I propose R2P must be reinterpreted without the use of force or intervention. As I said, call a spade a spade. If you want humanitarian intervention, call it humanitarian intervention. Keep R2P without any use of force. Let it be a non-coercive means or methods of resolving any dispute in another nation and protecting the small man, that is an individual. TWAIL considers R2P a neo-colonist tool, that is the Libyan situation. It is used to engage in regime change or to have a political bend of a society, of a sovereign, the way the Western powers want it to be, if I might say. And thus there is a need for the dominant powers to curb their desire to wear the halo and move around and trying to use force to bring in regime change. Now Now with that, that I put forth my point, now let us come to the reform. The first is the procedural reform. Here I am going to look into 2 points. Whose responsibility? R2P is a vast ocean. There are questions like who, why, where, when, all the whys come here. But the why that I am going to answer is who. That is whose responsibility is. I am trying to put this responsibility or give this responsibility to a particular agent. Now the general approach is who, can, should. But that is insufficient, especially when states, they are either unwilling to use their use this R2P. They are unwilling. They are like, okay, fine, there are some political motives. I cannot. That is either one approach, or on the second side, it is they are overwilling. At any chance you see a country, a sovereign sees a dispute, they would jump with joy to go and use the concept of R2P in order for their motive. Because of these 2 reasons, either complete unwillingness or overwillingness, I say that there must be a specific agent who would deal with R2P or who would be given this responsibility. And it is necessary that for R2P to be effectively implemented, which is just a norm, to bring it into, let's say, suppose a customary practice, or to make it more worthwhile in the international community, we need to have a specific agent. Having a specific agent will also increase accountability of who is supposed to, who is responsible, and it might and will hopefully deter the perpetrators of crime. Knowing who might come and stop you sometimes stops you from doing the act as well, right? So that is the motive behind it. Now currently this responsibility, according to all the documents, is with the international community and subject to authorization of the United Nations and not any particular body or not particular state or any actor. Now the sad thing is UN lags in assuming timely and decisive response, which is the 3rd pillar, and there's no accountability. So who's responsible for all the crises going on in the world? We all are. So if we all are responsible, it's not a big deal, because whom do we blame? No one. So I propose here, regional organizations must be empowered. Now Article 52 of the United Nations Charter enables regional organizations to step in to maintain peace and security. I call them regional subcontractors or contractors for implementation of international law. Now mind you, I am not looking for a subdivision of international law, or I say that regionalism must be promoted. No. Look at it as these subcontractors are just going to implement what the principles of international law say. By empowering regional organizations, it is the best possible solution because it avoids unilateralism, that is one country taking the burden of wearing the halo, or it overcomes the UN delay in identifying who will be responsible and authorizing what actions can be taken, and at the same time it would maintain internationalism. An example, if I might quote, is, let's say, suppose there's an Asian country, naming none of these sovereigns, is a perpetrator. Okay, it is having atrocities or conducting atrocities against its own nationals. Then who will be responsible? I say, as proposed, it would be organizations, regional organizations like ASEAN, SAARC, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. They would be responsible. They would have to spearhead the responsibility to protect. They would have to restore and maintain peace and security in that region, that is the Asian region. R2P, as proposed earlier, should not mean the use of force. Now, if it means no use of force, that means it does not require any military prowess. The regional organizations, as are, with their objectives, can pressurize, use tactics which are already existing in order to curb the crises which are going on, in order to protect the small man, that is the individual. Alas, once again, this Article 53 of the United Nations Charter, which requires the mandate of the Security Council, once again, for use of any tactic by the regional organizations. Once again, they have to take the permission or the mandate of the Security Council. That brings me to the next question. We need to go beyond United Nations Security Council. Now, to be honest, this is a huge debate and a huge session it would be by itself, but I'm just making a small attempt to address it if I can, if I come up with any concrete solution here. So as we all know, the role of Security Council is to to maintain peace and security in the world. However, now the 5 members, when there is a dispute between 2 of them, or one of them is using its veto power, what happens then? Now, as we know, 2 of them currently are already engaged in violation of human rights. They are the perpetrators. Now, in case the global community, let's say, suppose, wants to stop it, can they do anything? Yes? Yes, they can. That is by the United Nations General Resolution of 377, that is Uniting for Peace Resolution, which enables and empowers the General Assembly action when there is. Thank you. When there is lack of unanimity in the Security Council. With that, the substantive reform which I propose is the 4th pillar. Now, if you look at the original document, that is by the ICISS, it says that there are 3 pillars. There should be 3 responsibilities: responsibility to prevent, protect, and rebuild. However, in today's time, according to the 2009 report, there is no responsibility to rebuild. After the plight of what we see in Afghanistan, there is a need to rebuild. The responsibility to rebuild must be given to someone or must be recognized in the international community. Especially now, what would happen after. I'm not saying what is happening, but what would happen. That is the question we did in the first part. What will happen in Ukraine, Russia? We need to rebuild the global community. There comes your concept of responsibility to rebuild as well. However, here I'm not going to give you the answer. It is for us to discuss, that is when it comes to responsibility to rebuild, whose responsibility it is and what does it mean to rebuild. With that, my bulge call here, bugle call here, R2P should exclude use of force. R2P should be assigned to a specific agent. There is a need of reform in the United Nations organization, especially with the Security Council. And finally, we need to reform R2P from rhetoric to reality. Thank you. Let us discuss.